Okay, hi everybody. My name is Aisha Jalani, and today I'm going to be hosting a session today with Chelsea Smith. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Chelsea, if you want to go ahead and let us know what kind of law you practice and just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Smith, and I am a plaintiff side class action lawyer in London, Ontario, at a firm called McKenzie Lake Lawyers. Our cases are national in scope for the most part, so our clients, our class members, and our representative plaintiffs come from all over the country. And so I practice in both English and French. My first language is English, but I went to law school bilingually, so I am able to help class members and representative plaintiffs in both languages.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome that you are bilingual. I know a lot of students were looking into going into law school in Quebec or trying to do something where they can also speak French, because everyone knows that it's very useful if you can speak both English and French, especially when you're practicing law. So I will ask you a bit more about that later. But just to start at the very beginning, how did you know that you wanted to pursue law? Some people, they know since they were kids. Some people have a very unconventional path of getting there. I'm just curious to see how you knew you wanted to pursue law.
It definitely was not, like I've heard stories from other people that they were 5 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old, 17, and had one very clear moment where they knew that they wanted to practice as a lawyer, or some of them even knew what type of law they wanted to do. But that was not the case for me. When I was younger in elementary school, I wanted to either be like a martial arts instructor or a helicopter pilot. We were very far from wanting to be a lawyer, but it's something that adults in my life when I was growing up had always told me, whether it was my parents or extended family members, teachers, coaches for sports that I was involved with, told me again and again, oh, you're going to be a lawyer one day. I really liked taking on the job of helping people who were afraid to speak up for themselves. I also really liked to get everything very clearly in writing, even if it was something for like a sport that I was involved with. I like to have it in writing and found it fun to do that. So people had said I was going to be a lawyer, but I wanted to not have a career choice in mind in like concrete. When I went to school, I kept an open mind, and after undergrad I had a year off, and in that year I had planned that year off to decide, do I want to go to law school, do I want to go to grad school, and decide then. And at that moment I decided to give law school a try. I had no reason not to, and I thought that it would be a useful experience even if I didn't end up practicing law. It aligned with a lot of things that I liked to do. I liked reading, I liked analyzing things, I liked writing, giving presentations. So I thought, well, why not? People that care about me are telling me that this is a good option for me, so I will try it and see what comes of it. I was still very young at that time. I was only 21 when I started, so I was like, if this doesn't work out, it's money lost and time lost, but in the grand scheme of life, not too much of either of those. So I can survive this if it doesn't work out.
That's really interesting, because like I said, a lot of people are dead set, and it's really interesting that it was more of like, let me just try. I guess it really shows that if you just give something a shot, something great can really come out of it. And it's nice that you had the mindset of you won't be losing too much, because it is a great experience to even be attending law school, even if you finish and you realize you don't actually want to be a lawyer anymore. Just to have that degree and just to have that experience of things that you learn in law school, I think that's always very beneficial. And just to go to your undergrad, what did you study in your undergrad? What did you major in, and what was that like for you?
My undergrad was amazing. Probably the best 4 years of my life to date, although I've had pretty amazing years after as well, but those years were they'll always hold a special place in my heart. I went to Huron University. It's an affiliate of Western University. So I'm from London originally. I was 17 when I started undergrad. So I liked the idea of still being pretty close to my family members. And I have a twin brother who was still in high school, so I wanted to stay close. We were very close as well, so I liked that idea. And I studied So I went in thinking that I would study something very, like, I thought that there were only certain programs that you could study if you wanted to go to law school. But I was I was given misinformation. So I thought in my first year that I would have to take like political science, history, some sort of pre-law course, philosophy. But I ended up, someone else told me the correct information that you can do anything you want before law school. So I ended up just being, I took the courses that sounded the most interesting to me and most aligned with my interests and what I enjoyed doing. So I took, well, in first year, I took science and philosophy and a wide range of things, but I took one English class and one French class, and those were, I enjoyed all of my classes, but those were the ones that stood out to me the most. So I ended up doing an honors double major in English and French, which was very useful because you do a lot of writing in those programs and a lot of analyzing too. They were both a lot of literature classes. And because I was at Huron, my classes were very, very small. So I got a lot of, like we had discussions in class, every single class. We did a lot of like seminar presentations. So that helped prepare me as well to know how to do, like that helps. It's not the same as speaking in court, but it's closer to that than sitting in a class of like 1,000 students and just listening and watching a PowerPoint. So that was very helpful. And then the small class sizes as well, and the fact that I had the same professors year after year for both of those subjects. There were some others mixed in there as well, but there were two professors who I had 3 times each, and they ended up writing my reference letters when I applied to law school, and they knew me very well. They had seen my academic career, I guess, my undergraduate career over the span of 3 or 4 years, and like how I had evolved academically. And they were able, because in one of their classes in French, my class sizes were normally 6 to 8 students, but I had one class with 4 students in it. So you can imagine like the level of personal detail that those professors could put into the letters, and that was a huge help for when I was applying to law school.
That's great. I think that the idea of having that small class size, because I think a lot of students struggle with how do you ask a professor. Like I go to UFT and it's way too much. Like our classes are huge, and you are honestly a number. You have to really try hard to put yourself out there and constantly put your hand up and participate and stay back after class, which for a lot of students can be really intimidating. But if you have that smaller class, I guess in tutorials or in kind of sessions or seminar classes, maybe in your 3rd and 4th year, it's a lot easier when their classes are smaller. And also it's great that, that you mentioned that you can study whatever you want, because a lot of people that are watching today, if you're already an undergrad or even if you're a high school student watching that is looking into what should I study, I made that same mistake as well, where I thought that I had to do something that was related to law. I mean, I was kind of forcing myself to go into like, I'll do criminology without even really knowing what criminology meant. I thought it was like, okay, criminal law, criminology sounds like it would go well together. I mean, I ended up doing poli-sci, which I'm very glad because I love it. I think it's so interesting. And when you're interested in it, you're getting the grades that you need. So I think that's the most important thing. I'm glad that you picked the English and the French that you really ended up enjoying, because I'm sure that paid off with your GPA as well. And also just the fact that you say that it was the best years of your life. I'm sure it was obviously for like other reasons as well, but I'm assuming it's because you also really enjoyed what you were studying. And that's really important, especially if you're going to then commit to law school later, and be in school for even longer. It's nice if that first foundation you had a positive kind of outlook on. So thank you for sharing that. And then my next question is, did you take the LSAT and how was that process like for you? So the reason I asked that is because sometimes there are unconventional pathways of getting to law school. Some lawyers now, they actually went to the UK or they went to Australia and then they came back here and then started law school here. So it was a way where they didn't have to do the LSAT. Some people leave and they take a long break and then they come back and they don't have to take the LSAT anymore because of that long break. So I want to know if you could just tell people that are watching what your journey was like studying for the LSAT, if you took it, if you're okay, or if you remember the range your score was in, or what kind of, if it was a good score or medium, whatever you could say about it. And then I guess if you could also touch on the admission process of like applying and the personal statements and like, as you mentioned, the reference letters as well.
Of course. So like I mentioned earlier, I took a break after finishing my undergrad. I took a break for a year. I wanted to work. I had a scholarship that covered all of my undergrad, and I needed to earn money to pay for grad school or law school. And so I worked, and I also needed like the time to figure out what I wanted to do. I felt like in my fourth year, when my friends were choosing, I was worried that at that time, if I had tried to select that and go straight from undergrad into whatever I had chosen, that it might have been partially influenced by like when certain due dates or applications, like when applications were due or when LSAT tests could be written. I didn't want that to influence it, or I just wanted the time to really reflect on what I wanted to do. And I was very actively involved in my undergrad, which helped make it a wonderful experience, but didn't give a lot of downtime to reflect on, like, this is a lot of money, the most money that you've ever spent at this point in your life. Is this something you want to do for sure? Or are you just taking like the easy way right now because people that you care about are telling you that this is what they want you to do? So I was in Northern Quebec at the time, and I was working as a language assistant in a high school, and it was an amazing year too, an amazing community that I lived in 3 hours north of Quebec, Quebec City. So that was a wonderful year, and I had a lot of downtime to really explore what I wanted to do, speak to current students at different grad schools, different law schools. And because I was bilingual, I didn't have to do the LSAT if I wanted to go to a French language law school. But I wanted to do law school bilingually. I wanted to learn legal language. It's a language of its own. I wanted to learn it in both English and French. And I wanted to study both common law, which exists. Civil law is common law. This is going to be confusing now. Our system of law, if you do civil litigation in Ontario, outside of Quebec, it's a common law tradition, and our criminal law system is as well. But in the province of Quebec, they have a civil law tradition that comes from the history of how Quebec was founded. It's a system that goes back to France and the Napoleon Code. And so their law is in a huge code. I don't have one on my bookshelf because this is my home office, but I have one very close to my computer at my work office, even though it's all online as well. But those were the two traditions. I wanted to learn them both. I wanted to be able to work in both languages because I had just spent like however many years of school acquiring French as a second language. So I was it was not mandatory for me if I wanted to go to, for example, and this is the requirements at the time. I don't know what they are now, but if I wanted to do the common law en français at the University of Ottawa, then I didn't need an LSAT score. But if I wanted to do that program in English, then I did need one. I could have gone to McGill as well. I don't think they required it at the time. And then I was also looking at Western law back in London, and they required it, so I did have to do it. The problem was that there was not a law school admissions test anywhere close to where I was living at the time. I was living in a very, very francophone community, like I said, 3 hours north of Quebec City, and there was no LSAT even in Quebec City. The closest one was in Montreal, but it was full. So I got on a plane and, well, a bus and then a plane and a boat, and made this long trip to Windsor, Ontario, where there was one left. I did originally have like a private LSAT set up. I had hired a proctor to do that, and had done all the steps that LSAC required for that to take place where I was living, but it fell through at the last minute because the person was hospitalized that was going to proctor, and it was the only person that met all the requirements in that town to do that. So last minute, when all the spots close to me and most convenient were, and they weren't close, like Montreal was like 6 or 7 hours from where I was living, but that was full. Like Toronto, which would have been more convenient to fly into, was full. So I ended up writing in Windsor, and it was an experience. It went well in the end, and I don't remember my exact score, but it was, I think, in like the low 90th percentile, like maybe 93%, 93rd percentile, but I don't remember exactly because it doesn't really matter after you get in. It's not something that, and I thought it mattered so much to me at that moment, and it doesn't matter afterwards. But it was a very long day of traveling to get there, and I was exhausted. And then the hotel that I was staying in, I like booked a really, really cheap hotel to try to save money. And it ended up having a party in it, and the cops came and made everyone leave in the middle of the night. So I switched hotels and ended up paying for a second hotel that was not cheap. It was just conveniently like located close by, and I found it and checked into the hotel that night. And I was so tired the next day, but it went well, and I was able to surprise my family back in London. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, I quickly stopped back in London on the way to Toronto to fly back, and so it was a good experience. But it was it was a lot of resilience. A lot of resilience was required in those, like in that 48-hour period, but it worked out in the end. And it's a funny story that my family and my friends laugh about now, with everything that had happened during those 48 hours. But it worked out. And my tip for the LSAT is I was obviously studying alone for it because I lived in a place where no one else was writing the LSAT at the time. But I was working at a high school, a really large high school, and I would do practice tests all the time in the evening and on weekends, under real conditions where it was quiet and you had, I think, like 35 minutes per section. I forget, I could be wrong about that. It's a long time ago, but I would also do them at in busy, distracting situations, because I found that I was having trouble focusing on the test even when it was silent. Like my mind would wander, like, what else could I be doing that's more fun right now than this? And I did have fun with the logic games section. I think that's what it's called. It was fun, but some of the reading comprehension questions weren't the most interesting, and they felt long, even though it was 35 minutes. So I would, like, if we had a break during the day at school or during the lunch hours when the staff room was packed with people, I would write sections during those conditions so that there was lots going around that was more interesting than what I was doing. But I had to stay focused. There was noise. So I learned to like write and stay focused in very busy environments. I wrote at the airport when I was flying back home. I wrote on the plane, and that really helped because during my LSAT exam, there was someone who was crying. There was just a lot of things that could have been distracting, and time matters so much during the LSAT, and it helped me just tune everything out and focus. But I hear that it's online now and you write it alone, so no one has to worry about that anymore. But if I hadn't prepared that way, I don't know if I would have. I would have lost a lot of time being distracted for sure.
I think that definitely is a really funny story, and I admire your resilience, because I feel like a lot of people would have gotten really overwhelmed and been like, just like, excuse my language, but screw this, like I can't do this. Like it just seemed like all odds were against you. And you know, the fact that you have to go all the way to Windsor, I think you mentioned a boat as well. And so that's insane to me. And like I said, I admire your commitment to it as well. Probably one of the reasons why you are where you are today, it's because you stayed committed to what you wanted to do and you didn't back out from it. And I think for a lot of people that are watching, you know, sometimes some things I would say are a sign fine, that you shouldn't be going down a certain path. But at the same time, if it's something that you've been wanting to do and you've worked so hard, like you said, you studied for so long, and you force yourself studying different conditions as well, you did so many practice tests, at that point, it's like you started already working on this, you might as well finish it, even if it's hard. Even the whole changing hotels, like that must have been very, I mean, I would have been very anxious in that situation, and then to take the test the next day and still do well, that's incredible. So I think that for people that are watching, the lesson to take from your story, as you know, amusing as the story was, is just kind of having that commitment and that resilience and that faith that you want to do something and you've said you're going to do this, and even if things don't seem like they're working out, in the end they will. I'm assuming you kind of had to force yourself to just be like, okay, like it's okay if I have to change hotels, it's okay if I have to do this, I'm still taking the LSAT tomorrow, or whatever it might be. And you must have felt a lot of relief after finishing it as well, after getting through those 48 hours and finally getting to sit that test, and then I go home and see your family as well afterwards. So I'm glad that all of that worked out for you. And with the LSAT, it is something that definitely we need to do a lot of practice tests. It's very smart of you to practice in busy conditions as well. So I might be wrong, I'm not entirely sure, but I believe they are returning to in-person LSAT soon, just because everything else is returning to in-person as well. And even if you're at home, you never really know what could distract you. If you're someone who's used to only doing the LSAT in your quiet room, you know, what if you live at home and that day it happens to be loud at home for some reason, or something's happening downstairs? Like, you need to be prepared for having different noises and different distractions with you. So I think that's very smart, not even for the LSAT, even for literally any exam you do, undergrad or law school or whenever. So I think that's definitely very smart, because a lot of the time we're told to practice in under test conditions, and everyone thinks that's in silence. But like you said, people are crying. I knew someone who took the LSAT and the person was having a panic attack next to them. And that is extremely, that's horrible for the person, but then for everyone that's directly around them, you're obviously tempted to turn and look and see if they're okay, things like that. So I guess, well, you can't simulate a panic attack, you can at least simulate the fact that there's noises and things happening around you. So very, very good advice. I've never really heard, we've talked a lot of lawyers, I've never heard anyone do that specifically. So I think that's very, very great for students to hear. I know now I want to know more about your law school experience itself. So you said undergrad was the best 4 years of your life. Now I'm wondering, what was your law school experience like? So not just the kind of classes you took, but also, I guess, your social life, like any extracurriculars that you were involved in. I know law schools do a lot of clubs and things like that. So if you could just speak a little bit more on that.
Of course. So I applied to 3 law schools that all allowed me to do the joint common law, civil law school programs, but also take classes in both languages. So I ended up applying to McGill, Ottawa, and Western has a program called the Western Laval Joint Program with Laval University, which is in Quebec City. So that's the one I ended up doing. I was accepted to all 3 schools with like around the same time, but I knew that my boyfriend, who's now my husband, was still in London, and my family was here, and I was very close to both, and I had a lot of friends here as well. So I decided to do that. I had been away for a year, and it was law school. So law school for me was 4 years instead of 3, because I did an extra year in Quebec City at Université Laval, and it was also a great experience. I got to experience 2 schools, 2 different schools in 2 different cities, 2 different languages, 2 different legal systems. It was a great experience as well. It was a lot of fun. The people at law school at both schools were so nice. And the social environments at both schools were also great. And I'm a huge football fan, so both schools had, both Western and Laval have amazing football teams, and I've seen them twice meet each other for the national championship, and seen one school win, and then the next year the other school win. So that was fun as well. So I started my law school. I'll just quickly explain. So I started my first year, and that year was all at Western in London, Ontario. Then my 1L summer, I did some school in Quebec. Then I worked as a lifeguard my last year lifeguarding, because I had lifeguarded for 8 years. I was a pool manager, so that was fun working outside. My last summer working outside. And then my second year was also all at Western Law. Then that summer, my 2L summer, I worked at the permanent mission of Canada to the United Nations and Conference on Disarmament in Geneva through a program that Western had. And then I went from there to Quebec and started my third year. My third year started in Quebec for the first half, and then I finished at Western. And then my 3L summer, which is when I graduated from Western Law, I had my graduation ceremony, but I did the traditional 2L summer job that summer. And then my fourth year was entirely at Laval in Quebec City. And then I came back and wrote my bar exams with people that would have been the year below me at Western Law. And then I articled right after then, and then was hired back and became a lawyer. So it went by really quickly. It was 4 years, and everyone was like, why do you want to do 4 years and you could just do 3? But it honestly went by so fast. And because I was back and forth, it felt a lot faster than, it didn't feel like I was at one spot for 3 years. It felt very quick. And it did mean that I had to take extra classes all the way through. Like, I was overloading when I was at Laval, and I had extra classes in first year and second year as well when I was at Western Law. But it was a really interesting program academically to see and be able to compare both legal traditions side by side. And I thought that they would be way more different than they were, but they turned out to be pretty similar. And I liked the challenge of jumping into upper year classes at Laval without having any introduction to Quebec civil law. Like, there were exchange students there from other countries, but they all came from countries with civil law traditions. So some of them might have been newer to French. Most of them spoke French, but I think there was one student from Brazil who was new to French, but not new to civil law traditions. So it was, I met so many awesome people through doing this joint program and through being at both schools. And socially, like, Western Law can't be beat. It's a great experience. And there were, like you said, there were a lot of clubs. And in my first year, I founded a club called the Western Law French Society. So we would meet, we had a common lunch hour, which was so new to me, but everyone had the same lunch break. I don't remember the time of this break, but it was generous, like an hour and a half. And during that time, a couple times a month, we would meet for like French conversation hour, and based on ability to speak in French. And there were way more people attending it than I ever thought would be there. And sometimes we bribed them with pizza, but they would show up even when we didn't. So that was great. And I also was in other clubs as well. And I TA'd when I was in law school. I TA'd a first year law class in my second year. So that was fun. It was a wonderful group of students where a lot of us are still friends. So I got to know, because Western Law is pretty small, I got to know students in all 3 years, which helped later on when I had to join a group to do my indexing for the bar exam, like prepare for the bar exams. I knew a lot of people in the year below me, so that was great too. And it's just a very caring school. It's small. You know everyone, despite them not being in the same year or not having the same end goal. And it's very caring. I was worried that, based on like things I had read or things that I had heard from people, movies, TV shows, I thought that law school would be very, very competitive, and that people would like feed you misinformation about your classes so that you wouldn't do as well. But it wasn't like that at all. People were very, everyone was helping everyone else. And it's not the type of program academically where if you have one fact that someone else doesn't have, that it's going to help you, because it's not, your exams are open book for the most part. So the facts, everyone has them, and people would share their notes all the time. It was just very different experience than I was expecting, and different for the better, for sure.
That's great. I'm glad you had such a positive experience of law school and that you mentioned that the competitiveness, because that's something that we see in movies. I don't know if you've seen Legally Blonde, for example, but I think a lot of like younger law students who've all seen Legally Blonde, and we see that as like, okay, that's so scary. Like people are going to be competitive and they're going to like hide their notes and they're not going to share. They're not going to study together. But I think that one thing we keep hearing is that, you know, everyone is on the same boat, and chances are they're nervous about making friends and stuff too, and they also need help with their notes. So working collaboratively in law school works out really well. I think it's really nice to know, and I'm glad that you had that experience going to two different places. For some people, law school can be overwhelming because you're at the same place. You know, you just did your undergrad at one university, and you have to do another university for law school. And it doesn't matter. Like it's nice that you did 4 years, because like you said, it does fly by. People think that it's like, why would you want to do 4 more years of more school? But if you're again learning something that you're interested in, and you're passionate about, and you know you're getting to compare two different legal traditions as well at the same time, I guess it always keeps you on your toes and it keeps things interesting for you as well. So it's a very interesting, and I hope that some students that are watching can look into this program. I know it's obviously still offered. I think the Western program now has gotten bigger in terms of size. It's become more popular now, but that doesn't matter. I'm sure that I know the environment at Western is very, it's a lot of social and student-based stuff. So I think that even then it would be great to go there in comparison to maybe UFT law, which again is huge. I think I've heard things about that being super competitive, but again, it's all like heard things and you never know until you're actually there. So I think that for anyone that's applying, I think also look into how holistic the school is. And if that aligns with what you're interested in, especially like law schools offer different programs, like the ones that you went to, it's not just standard, get your law degree. There's also some where they give you your master's in business at the same time, or your master's in philosophy or something at the same time as getting your law degree. I think that's always really, really interesting. So I'm glad that you took a different path as well. Now I just want to turn into what you do today. So if you could speak more, I know you touched in the very beginning about what your firm does, that you work at, but if you could talk more about what kind of fields of law are you practicing, maybe what a typical day in your career looks like. I know that every day is probably different, but in terms of like your day-to-day responsibilities or the usual type of cases that you're working on.
Sure. So I work at a full service firm that has just over 50, maybe between 50 and 60 lawyers. And I practice, like my colleagues, some of them practice family law or corporate law, real estate, franchise, like all different types of commercial litigation, every type of law you can imagine. But my team, there are 5 lawyers on my team, and we practice almost exclusively plaintiff side class actions. Sometimes we do non-class action litigation if it's complex and multi-party, but for the most part, we do plaintiff side class actions. They might be pharmaceutical class actions or historical abuse, like social justice class actions involving detention centers, for example, or consumer protection, like automobile class actions. And there, I really like it because it aligns. So class actions target 3 goals: improving access to justice, because if you have a claim worth $5,000, it's not economical always to pursue that. You might pay more. You likely pay more for a lawyer and the expert witness than that claim is worth. But if you pool together with 100,000 other people in the same situation with $5,000 claims, then you can share your resources and get a lawyer and make your way through the court system and get the defendant's attention too, because these governments and huge corporations, if they see a $5,000 lawsuit against them, they might not care at all. But if they have this huge multi-million-dollar lawsuit against them from these 100,000 people, which is just a number I'm using for an easy example, then they might take notice and change their behavior. So it's access to justice, behavior modification, and then judicial economy is the other goal that class actions are trying to achieve. And that appeals to me as well. I like being efficient with the use of resources, and our courts the resources are very strained for the courts right now. And it has been that way the entire time that I've been a lawyer. So it's nice to do something to help improve the allocation of judicial resources. So I do like all of those things about class actions, but I also like that, and this is surprising to me, in undergrad and even during law school, group projects were not my favorite thing. I liked independent projects much better. I liked working on my own timeline and doing my own thing. But in the type of law that I do, our cases are so big that we work on them all as a team. So I have come to really love that part of my job. I really like working with my colleagues. They are all amazing people and so fun to work with. And I never thought that I would like working on a team 100% of the time, but it's one of my favorite things about my job now. It's so different than in school, working on a team. And I did team sports. Like, I liked teams, but I did not like team projects for school at any point in my life. But now I really like working on a team, and I don't think I could go back to working alone without a very difficult transition. I really like working with other people, bouncing ideas off of them, dividing up the work based on our strengths. It's so fantastic. And then finally, I really like, well, I guess two more things I like about what I do now. I love helping people. So the fact that I get to speak to people every day, or email people every day and help explain things to them in plain language instead of all of the legal language, and just help them understand what's going on and what we can do for them, or what give them resources they might need to refer to for other help that we can't provide. And then because I do class actions and we have class members from all over the country for a lot of our cases, I get to use my legal French skills all the time as well. So I get to practice in both languages, which I didn't think would be something, I didn't think that, because I wanted to stay in London, I didn't think that I would be able to use my French as often. But because I do class actions and our cases, we have Francophone class members, I get to use both languages every day. And it's great because I love different languages, and I would like to learn more, but I only speak English and French right now. But it's just great to be able to continue something that you worked on for so long and that you're passionate about, and be able to do that every day is great. So in terms of a typical day, each day varies, as you said, but I do like my typical days that I'm in my office. I'm usually one of the first people there because I'm a huge morning person. And I get to the office usually before 7 and work on my computer sitting at a desk all day. I go, our law firm is very social, so I will take an hour for lunch each day and eat with different people. Before the pandemic has changed things a little bit, but we still are working in the office. I know a lot of my friends still are working from home, but our firm works in the office with just a few exceptions. And I'm typically doing legal research, drafting documents like materials for motions, because class actions, compared to other types of law, types of litigation, we do a lot of motions instead of trials. Like trials are rare in class actions. Usually the case settles before it gets to a trial, but we have motions all the way through. We have to, the first major step in a class action after you have filed it, at that point it's a proposed class action, and you have to get the court's permission through a motion to do the litigation as a class action. So that's a lot of the time what we're working on, drafting these motion materials for the certification motion. research, correspondence with co-counsel or defense counsel, Zoom meetings a lot nowadays, a Zoom court a lot, to do these motions or to do case management conferences, because each class action eventually gets paired with a judge, one judge who hears all the motions. So we're with a judge for each class action for several years, the entire duration of the class action. And we will meet occasionally with all the lawyers and the judge to do what's called a case management conference to figure out the timeline for the next steps, or resolve any issues, get guidance from the court on certain steps. So there's those as well. But it's a lot of time at a desk working on a computer, a lot of writing. That part is never shown in TV shows, because I think it would probably be not make for good TV. It might be too boring for TV. But yeah, and I think that's true for other areas of law. Maybe not if you do, like if you're a crown attorney or you're a criminal defense lawyer, then you're on your feet in court a lot. But from what I've seen of myself and my colleagues in different areas of law, it's a lot of time typing and writing and reading, which it suits me just perfectly, because I like reading and writing a lot. But yeah, that's a typical day. I sit at a desk. So I try to balance that outside of the office with a lot of movement. I am on a swim team, which I did during law school too. I was on a master's team at Laval, a master's team here in London, intramurals, running. So I try to balance it with a lot of movement, walking, working out, swimming. And then I do a lot of volunteering outside of the office as well. Some of it resembles what I do. It's not practicing law, but some of it involves reading documents for different organizations and suggesting things, changes in like in my role as a board member I'm on a couple of boards, but then some of it is very different from what I do all day, and it's just very fun volunteering. I volunteer at the library helping kids who struggle to read, so that's always very fun and very different from what I do during the day at work. Not that we don't have fun, we do have fun, probably sometimes too much fun. And our neighbors on our floor are probably like, wow, they're really loud. But we, like I have some serious volunteering roles where we're looking at like, oh, are we liable for, are we at risk of being liable for something? And then I have some fun volunteer roles as well. And they're all fun, but just some are 100% fun, and we're showing kids that reading is fun, and some are with some serious topics as well. So it's a good balance. I really like it, everything that I'm doing.
That sounds really great. And it's really great. Like, I think this entire conversation has been so positive, and it's really, really refreshing to hear that as a student, that, there is a possibility for you to still be involved in, volunteer experiences, still be involved in movement, kind of exercise. And I guess that comes into kind of self-care and doing things for yourself outside of work. So that's really great to hear and to see that is possible. And also that your firm seems very social. It seems very welcoming. I can tell from just the way they were speaking about it. So also really nice to know that, you're not going to be like a lot of lawyers, well, not a lot of lawyers, but some lawyers have said, I guess they have their own reasons for this, but like working is very different, and it's not as fun as it seems to other people. And you're just sitting alone in your office working on everything yourself. So it's nice that there are possibilities of working with other lawyers in one case. Maybe there are other fields of law where you also have to kind of consult other lawyers, or maybe it's 2 or 3 working on the same case. So it's nice to know that it's not just entirely alone. I agree that I don't like school projects where it's in a group. I think maybe because it's your grade at stake. And so you'd rather just get on it on your own. But when you're in the workplace, it would get very, I guess, overwhelming if it was just you. And it's nice that you guys can divide up those tasks based on who's better at what and who has great strength on what area. And not just that, if you're kind of stressed about a case, like you have someone to talk to about it, because they're also probably stressed too. And they know everything about the case already. So you can kind of go back and forth with each other. I think that's really, really great to hear. So my next question, this was one that students always ask. It's what's one common misconception about lawyers that you hear about the most?
That is a wonderful question. I would say that like the way that lawyers are depicted in television shows and movies is that they're this like tough, bull warrior type character, and that they go in and they're very intense and usually like very masculine, and just that like very tough, intense, aggressive type of person. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but
I get what you're trying to say.
that's like one type of lawyer. I mean, they definitely do exist, but there are different ways of being a lawyer. There are different personalities that can succeed in law, and that as long as you're true to yourself, then you can, like if you're being who you truly are, then you can succeed. If you're trying to be someone that you're not, if you're not that type of character and you're trying to act that way, then it's really going to eat away at you and be exhausting for you to always be playing the role of someone you're not. So I think that if everyone understood that there's different ways of succeeding as a lawyer, different ways of practicing law, and that there's benefits to all of those ways, there's pros and cons. There's ways where if you're not super aggressive, there's ways where that can get you further than being the aggressive type, and that there's space for everyone in the practice of law. You don't have to mold yourself into this type of character that's depicted on TV and in movies, and I think that depiction is also harmful because I mean, it's no secret, there's all these reports and statistics out there about how practicing law, especially as a litigator, the type of lawyer that goes into court, is harmful on your mental health, and lawyers don't do very well when we look at the mental health of people in the profession, and there's a lot of people leaving the practice of law. But I think when all you're shown is this type of tough person that nothing gets to them, then you're also doing a disservice to everyone who's practicing law, because no matter who you are, there's something that will get to you at some point. And when that can be talked about openly with your colleagues or with your family, and you can be vulnerable, then you're going to be in the profession longer, perhaps more successfully in a way that's healthier. So I wish that was something that people knew about practicing law. And I have heard from people that are our class members, and they call and they say, "Oh, you sound so young, and you don't sound like you're going to be tough to the other side." That I just wish that those people understood that I might not sound tough, like I'm going to rip into the other side, but I can also achieve success on a file and in my practice of law. And there's going to be times where that's more beneficial in certain things that I come across as a lawyer than the other type of there's not two types, but then this like stereotypical lawyer type of like tough, intense warrior in going into battle.
For sure. I'm so glad that you addressed that, because I think that's something that a lot of people think, that they have to be this tough, cutthroat lawyer, because that's what you see on TV in like shows like Suits, where they walk in and they know what they're doing and they're super like strict. And I guess I know what you mean by like aggressive. It's not necessarily a bad thing if a lawyer is like that, but I think it goes to the other side, right, where like I think a lot of women especially hear this, like I've been told this before. I have friends who are in law school or interested in law school that have been told this before. Like, how are you going to be a lawyer? You're very sensitive, or oh, but you're very emotional. Oh, but you're very soft spoken. And it's like, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good lawyer. I think in a lot of places, like when it comes to dealing with clients, I think you'd be better off if you were someone who was sensitive and emotional, because you can show empathy a lot more evidently to the client. And I think when building their trust in that sense and building that relationship, you're more likely to succeed in that. Because if I was going to a lawyer, I would not want a cutthroat. Like, I mean, I guess in some ways it works out, but I want someone who has a bit of both, of course. And if they can show empathy, and I can, especially if it's in family law, for example, where it's very sensitive, I guess it just comes down to say where I agree there are no two types, but there also shouldn't be this one box of this is what a lawyer should look like and be like. And anything else is probably not going to be a good lawyer or not going to succeed. So I'm very, very glad that you touched on that. I don't have any more questions for you. I think this was such a great conversation. It's been lovely hearing, your journey, and also just hearing your positive outlook on things and the little pieces of advice that you were giving students as you kind of went along. I am not in law school yet, so even just having this conversation with you, like I always leave these Zoom calls feeling very refreshed. And I have little notes to myself where I'm like, okay, I could do this, I could do that now. And it's just inspiring to see kind of where you are today and going back to where you started, of not even being sure if you wanted to do law and simply having family tell you that you should maybe be a lawyer. I'm glad that you're at a point where you're happy with your career and your colleagues and everything like that as well. I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you want to say, or anything that you want to ask me, or anything that you want to add before we kind of wrap this up.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to answer these questions, and the questions were great. And if anyone listening to this later on has questions, especially if you have questions about doing law school bilingually, doing the Western Laval Joint Program, I'd be happy to answer them. Even if they're not related to either of those things, I would be happy to answer questions. Are you going to share my email address in like the description box of the recording?
I was going to ask you that once we
Okay.
end the recording, but I can ask you this right now as well. So sometimes some lawyers like, please don't give my like work email out or something like that, because they get clients emailing them there. So it's up to you if you want, like if there's a specific email that you would like students to reach out on. If you put it in the Zoom chat, I can put it in the description of the video. And that way students can reach out to you with any questions they have about the session or something that you might have mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely put that in. I will put that in the Zoom chat in just a second. My work email is fine. I get lots of emails to all of my email addresses, so I check it frequently. And yeah, I would just I enjoyed this conversation with you, and I wish you all the best. And it worked out for me. I was definitely a person that, like I said, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And this was the same when I was choosing my practice area as well. I thought that experiencing different things would show me ones I definitely didn't want to do, but I'm just I guess the type of person that likes everything, like all of the classes I took, all of the different assignments from different areas of law when I was a articling student and summer student before then. But I, in the end, was lucky to land in something that fits perfectly with my interests and that I enjoy so very much. So it worked out. I just like the entire time thought that I would have like a very clear, like, you do not want to do this, you want to do this, and still has not happened. Like class actions is great, and I don't see myself going elsewhere. It was something that I did really enjoy, but there were other areas of law when I was a student too that I liked as well. But I landed by luck and by some mentoring as well in class actions, and it's been wonderful. So if anyone else has that experience as well, it's happened to me too. So there's nothing wrong with you, and it can turn out wonderfully as well.
That's great. I think a lot of students will relate to a lot of what you're talking about because everyone thinks you have to have this like predetermined, yes, I'm going to be a lawyer. I know exactly what I want to do since like I was 18 or whatever, but that's so young to have your entire life like mapped out. So you know, definitely if anyone wants to reach out, that would be great. I think that you have a lot of valuable advice and experience that you can kind of talk about you know, with students one-on-one as well if they needed it. That's all for me. Again, thank you so much. This was so great. And we'll definitely be in touch with you in the future opportunities. We do things like panels with other lawyers as well. And so this summer, I think we're planning a couple. So we'll definitely be in touch and we'll reach out to you for future opportunities. This was very great for us. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. So thank you so much for everyone that did tune in and did watch. You can always look at our YouTube channel for further sessions that we have. And I will have Chelsea's email address in the description for anyone that does want to reach out. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.